Special Counsel Jack Smith has charged Donald Trump now on 4 counts: conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and a conspiracy against rights. Those are 4 different crimes that Donald Trump has now been indicted on. This is a huge and significant development. As we've mentioned in our breaking coverage, if you've heard about legal issues with Donald Trump before, if you've heard about him even being indicted before, this is the largest and most significant federal indictment of Donald Trump ever. This is, in ways that we will document, more significant even than the serious legal headaches he already has. This is also, to be clear, tonight, the first time any former president has been indicted by the federal Justice Department for trying to steal an election. Now, I mentioned, if you've been watching our breaking coverage here, and we've been going through what is a voluminous filing, that this is in some ways broader than people expected. Indeed, while a conspiracy only requires 1 or more other people, Jack Smith has found 6 other co-conspirators that are named in the filing. It alleges that Trump spread lies that there had been outcome-determinative fraud, meaning fraud that would actually have swung the election back to him, and that he had actually won. These claims were false, and Trump knew they were false. I want to put up on the screen what we are watching for. We'll take this in full. I want to share with everyone exactly what we're learning. This has been a day where we have been trying to hew closely to what we know and don't know. We've only learned in the past several moments, kind of the most last-minute heads-up you'll ever get from a government agency, in this case the Justice Department, that Jack Smith will approach the podium you see here, and some of the local beat reporters have now assembled in that room, that he will approach that podium any moment, we're told, at 6:01 p.m., in Washington, and speak on this new indictment. If he does do so, and of course you can see the preparations for that, it will be only the second time we have ever heard from Jack Smith publicly. The first was in the original indictment of Donald Trump in the classified documents and espionage case. So when we get anything out of that room, clues or the special counsel himself, we will bring it to you live here on The Beat. This is a breaking news night, so I want to start to bring in our experts. I have David Kelly, the former SDNY chief and my former boss, and a former SDNY prosecutor, Christy Greenberg, and our set of experts will be expanding over time. David, you've sat here in our newsroom, and we've talked about this eventuality. Tonight, it becomes reality. When you look at this case, when you look at the 4 counts, 3 conspiracies, and to be clear with people, that means above and beyond and separate from the violence on January 6th and what happened in those hours on January 6th. These are other longer-range conspiracies, some that run weeks, if not months. What kind of indictment is this? Do you view it as narrow or broad, as kind of precisely nitpicking, or looking at a wider set of election plots?
I'll say a couple of things. One is, I think it's a masterpiece. A masterpiece in the sense that it lays out very concisely what the charges are and what acts support the indictment. And I think that it's also a masterpiece in transparency for those very same reasons, which I think are incredibly important, that there's a whole group of folks out there that think this is a hoax. And these are facts that can't really be contested, haven't really been contested, and they really jump out. It's it's called a speaking indictment. I heard somebody earlier call it a screaming indictment.
I said shouting indictment.
But
because it's so loud.
It is, and it's loud, but there's an elegance to it and a grace to it because of how well it's composed and how it's just jammed with facts that are going to be very difficult for the defendant to dispute, and it's going to be very difficult for that large portion of the American populace to think that this is a hoax. And and this is just a testament to the fact that facts matter.
Yeah. And that fraud is one of the charges. I mentioned Christy Greenberg is here. So is Andrew Weissman, who's one of the many experts who's been waiting on this. Here we are. Andrew, you and I spoke about it earlier in our breaking coverage. David just pointed out that this is the area where lies become criminal. I want to ask you something I haven't had a chance to discuss with you yet, which is that Jack Smith goes out of his way in this indictment, as I read it, to say the defendant may lie in public. The defendant may zealously advocate for his criticisms of the election, and yet he went farther than that. Why does Smith say that? Some people might be surprised that it's okay to lie in the eyes of the DOJ. And why does he say that something worse happened here, something criminal?
So I think that's really smart to make it really clear to people reading this what is lawful and allowed under the First Amendment. It's clearly saying just because you say something that's not true, that's not what you're being charged with. That may be a crime if you are lying to a federal investigator, such as the position David and Christie used to have in the Southern District of New York. That may be a crime if you're under oath in front of Congress. And he's making it clear that you want to tell lies to the American public and to the press. That's one thing. You want to tell lies on the ellipse. That's one thing. That is not what's being charged here. And so I think that is really smart to make it very clear, because one of the things, this is really following up on David's excellent point, which is one of the reasons you do a speaking indictment, and particularly in a case there's no case that's going to get more attention, is there is an educational function here to those people who are willing to listen. And obviously there's some who are just not going to think this is worth the paper it's printed on, but those people willing to listen, who will read it, it is really important to do that. Having been in the special counsel Mueller investigation, one of the really wonderful things was seeing the judges understand that educational function and the unique moment that they have to help people understand the criminal law and why people are before them and what rights they have and why they're being held accountable.
I want to keep our entire panel here. We've got three experienced federal prosecutors now that the federal prosecution team run by Jack Smith has indicted Donald Trump for an attempted coup, for efforts to overthrow the election. I also want to give a little bit of a reset on what we're doing right now. I'm going to show everyone the room again where we're waiting Jack Smith to speak tonight. We're told that any minute Special Counsel Smith will come out to that podium and speak for only the second time in this entire probe. Unlike certain legal activities where you think you've heard leaks or quotes or interviews with prosecutors. The prosecutor in Georgia has done interviews, for example. We haven't had a single interview with Jack Smith anywhere in the world in any medium, and this will be only his second ever remarks. So you can bet that Donald Trump, the defendant, and everyone in America that is following this will want to hear what Special Counsel Smith has to say. We're going to bring you that here on MSNBC any moment. The second thing I want to tell you is what we're going to do here during this hour of breaking coverage on The Beat. This indictment just actually came out within the last half hour. So if you made your way to the news, to your news show here because you heard about it or you're just watching the news regularly, this is truly a breaking news moment. We're going to experience it together. And I can tell you while I'm talking to you through the camera, I have lawyers in all corners of this set going through every page of it. What I will tell you overall is we're going to try to break this up and make it clear so we learn tonight what's in here. We've been waiting for this for a long time. And so as an overview, I'll tell you that the conspiracy here is broader than just January 6th. In a moment, I'm going to read from the indictment itself. But just to give viewers the overview as we've been processing this, you can think of four big conspiracy allegations that the Justice Department is making tonight against Donald Trump. Number one, that in 7 different states they committed a type of fraud with those fake or fraudulent electors that we've heard about, that they tried to basically hijack the election process with a kind of a coup or an abuse of government power at the Justice Department. That's why there's so many co-conspirators listed. One of them was an actual DOJ official at the time. Third, something the January 6th committee really shined a light on, Donald Trump's efforts repeatedly to get the vice president to do something that the DOJ says was illegal, which is try to steal the election. And then fourth, with regard to the horrific violence that everyone remembers on that day, Jack Smith puts it very precisely here. He does not say that Donald Trump was the sole cause of that violence, or in law, what they sometimes call the but-for cause. He doesn't say it at that level, but he does say, new tonight in this indictment, that Trump and his co-conspirators tried to, quote, exploit the violence that did occur that day by people that Trump did summon to Washington in an ongoing effort to continue to try to illegally overthrow the election, even as that violence occurred and, according to many, got out of control. So that's different than, say, incitement or an insurrection. It is a different set of language. We're going to hear from our lawyers as we break that down. So those are just some of the new allegations in this conspiracy indictment. I also want to state, and you'll hear this repeatedly, that Donald Trump is a defendant. He has rights, and he is legally presumed innocent in the American system and court of law. Now, reading from the indictment, and then we're going to bring our lawyers back in, it states that Trump pursued, quote, unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results, and goes on to state that Trump sought to enlist, as I mentioned, the vice president to use his ceremonial role at the January 6th certification to, quote, fraudulently alter the election results.